Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Launched in 2015, the Omega Constellation Globemaster was the series production return of the legendary Pi-Pan constellations of the 1950s. The timepiece that I hold here was launched in 15 in stainless steel with a tungsten bezel. An extraordinary and subtle contrast. Everything about this case is dramatic, unique to the model, distinctive and handsome. It is not a huge watch, and I will pop it open and demonstrate just how compact it really is. 39 millimeters is a perfect size for a modern men's all-arounder, and at only 13 millimeters thick, this 39 millimeter watch will easily slip underneath any cuff. So you can see the cuff shot, that's the over-the-top shot. Let's do a down-the-barrel shot real quick. My wrist's 16 centimeters. You can see I've got plenty of clearance on each side, and the watch is measurable two different ways. Lug to lug, it is 46.5. So if you put it on a strap, 46.5 millimeters across the wrist. If you include the outermost rigid extension of the bracelet, you can see how it projects beyond the lugs. It's still a reasonable 51.6 millimeters, and the spacing between the lugs is 20 millimeters if you want to throw it on a strap. Now, taking a look at the bracelet, you have a small cross section to each link, which means it wears a little bit more like a dress bracelet, sort of like a Rolex President. But you can also see that with broad satin finished links, it does have a sporty overtone to it. You can also see that there are nice details, such as the not quite lozenge-shaped cross section of the links and the polished bevel that runs along the shoulders of the links. It's subtle, but it's there. You can also see that it continues the polished bevel of the case flank. On the underside, you'll note big gaps to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. So this is absolutely a sports watch bracelet. Removable links are fixed by screws, and then you can see that there are quite a lot of them, and being relatively short in cross-section, with so many removable, you will get a perfect fit. Now, looking internally, it is a double swing arm, twin trigger release deployment. You can see the use of ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps to maintain tight tolerances over time, so it will never become ropey or lose its grip. It will always be a snappy closure. Twin trigger release, so it can't accidentally pop open, and you can see how it's a relatively low profile, non-sports clasp design. There's no dive extension built in here, so it doesn't need to be an absolute tank. The case is handsome. You'll note that it's somewhere between a round case and a tonneau, which kind of puts it in league with something along the lines of a Rolex Oyster case, though this is distinctly different from the somewhat overused lyre lug case that we see on the Seamasters and the Speedmasters, and for that matter, it's also distinct from the somewhat overused Griffe or Manhattan case of the other constellations. This watch stands apart from every other Omega model line. Now, steel outboard with satin and with polish, but what really sets this watch apart is the coined tungsten bezel. Now, tungsten, as you can see, is quite a bit darker. It's a gray metal, in contrast to the silver of the steel, but it's also a much harder, denser metal than the steel. So not only does it look good, but it's also a wonderful heat shield for your case, as it's going to take most of the blows and prevent the case from scratching. So it's positioned prominently, so the first thing that contacts a hard surface is going to be that ultra-hard tungsten bezel. Now, the dial is the faceted so-called Pi-Pan, made famous by the 1950s constellation starting in 1952, and this is the constellation Omega purists wanted. It took a little while to bring it to market because of its master chronometer caliber, so it lost a bit of momentum coming out of the 2015 Basel World, but today it's regarded as one of the best Omegas to buy because it's one of the most original in style and enduring in beauty. 39 is a perfect size, and it gives this dial just enough space to breathe. You can see blackened applique indices, the star representing the observatory chronometer status of the early constellations, applique blackened Omega logo and marquee, and then blackened hands at center. Easy to read at a glance. This silver satin dial is more white than silver, so it makes for a nice black and white contrast. Turn it all over, and Omega reminds you that those original chronometer constellations were observatory chronometers, hence the term constellation in the nomenclature. So you can see the observatory and you can see the stars, but this one is a METAS, or master chronometer, a standard invented by Omega along with the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology. It meets the ISO 3159 chronometer standards, but it goes beyond that. It's tested in 6 positions, not 5, and is a fully cased up watch, not as a bare movement. So you get the accuracy, but you also get anti-magnetism, winding efficiency, power reserve, water resistance, and that extra position of chronometry testing, 6 versus 5. 2 barrels, 60-hour power reserve. You have a couple of subsidiary setting modes. One allows you to move the hour hand independently, which is great if you're traveling, because you can even jump the date forward or backwards, but it keeps ticking, it keeps on keeping time until you pull it to the second stop, and now you've activated hacking or stop seconds. It has a coaxial escapement as invented by George Daniels, which makes for short-term timing stability as well as long-term timing stability and reduced maintenance needs. Pivots on 38 joules, and it has bidirectional winding with twin mainspring barrels. It's braced against shock thanks to a dual anchored full balance bridge and a free sprung index, and it's anti-magnetic thanks to a silicone hairspring. The twin barrels not only give you that 60-hour power reserve, but they prevent the major balance amplitude drop-off after 24 hours that you generally see with a single-barreled movement like a Rolex 3-1 or 3-2-3-5. So the twin barrels have more of a purpose beyond simply providing a longer power reserve, and it beats at the quirky coaxial specific 25,200 vibration per hour beat rate. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. We're back with the Constellation, and I want to set the record straight. 39 joules, not 38.